Here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Let's turn our attention as the DA in Utah yesterday calling it an American tragedy, the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk exactly a week ago on the campus of Utah Valley University. We did see some of the charges being filed yesterday, including aggravated murder, which potentially carries being put to death, of course, the death sentence, the death penalty in this case, a man accused of it, as the attorney Jeff Gray calling the murder American tragedy in this press conference, talking about some of these charges. Let's be joined right now by Deseret News reporter Dennis Romboy. I appreciate your time here on Live Now from Fox. And the district attorney said he made this decision independently, saying there was no influence from others on what they're seeking. Can you speak to some of the history of the death penalty in Utah and what the DA is seeking in this?
Yeah, so obviously the death penalty has existed in Utah for a long time. For a lot of years, a defendant, a convicted killer could choose a firing squad. And then that was rescinded in 2004, so the only option was lethal injection. However, in 2015, the Utah legislature reinstated the firing squad as an option only if the drugs are not available for lethal injection. And that's where the law stands currently.
And how important was it for the DA there, Jeff Gray, to speak to that, saying it was an independent decision, that he read some of the facts, and that is why he's choosing to move in this direction for the sentence?
Yeah, I think, obviously this has been very politicized, and people on both sides calling for this or for that. And I think he looked at his evidence. There were aggravating circumstances. There are probably a dozen or so aggravating circumstances under which a county attorney could file aggravated murder charges that carries a capital punishment along with it. And this fit into that category in terms of I think they charged it under the provision that Charlie Kirk was killed by this suspect, but also he endangered the lives of other people as well. Of course, we didn't know if there's an active shooter situation right after this happened, but so that was the way that the aggravating circumstances were charged in this case.
And it's so very interesting to look at almost this on a case-by-case basis, and different states have different protocols when approaching the death penalty. Can you speak to the history of that in Utah? Obviously, it's a complicated history. How would you classify it?
It's complicated, and in Utah, there was an effort in 2022, I believe, by some Republican lawmakers to repeal the death penalty. That proposed bill failed to get out of a House committee. Since Utah was the first state to execute someone after the United States reinstated the death penalty in 1976, Utah executed Gary Gilmore by firing squad in 1977. And the state has had 7 executions since then. I think 3 of them have been by firing squad. The remainder have been by lethal injection.
And that is obviously what we're talking about here, just kind of the route in which they would do with the death penalty. And when you say firing squad, it obviously brings a graphic image to your mind. Is that a possibility in this case with the suspect, Tyler Robinson, if he is convicted?
I'd say it's a possibility if, in fact, the drugs for lethal injection are not available within 30 days of the execution date. That's what the law says currently. So I would think that would be a possibility if those drugs are not available. The last execution here in Utah was last year, 2024. That man was executed by lethal injection. The last firing squad execution was in 2014, I believe.
And can you speak to it at all? Because we see some of these death penalty cases in different parts of the country where the defense isn't necessarily trying to find a not guilty or kind of make them innocent in a way, but also to take the death penalty off the case. Do you believe that potentially could be the defense's move? Has that been any precedent in Utah before?
Yeah, I think prosecutors have used the death penalty as a bargaining chip to say if your client pleads guilty to the charges straight up, then we'll take the death penalty off the table. That certainly could be a possibility here in this case. As you know, Mr. Robinson does not have an attorney currently, And so that issue has not been discussed publicly at this point, but I would believe that that would be on the table.
All right, very good. Dennis Romboy, I appreciate your time, your insight there on this case in Utah. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, great conversation as always. So many complex details to this. A live picture right now there in Phoenix, Arizona, as Turning Point headquarters, as the tributes continue to pour in. And I also want to put up this in Nature talking about Utah death penalty laws, as this aggravated murder is the only charge eligible for the death penalty. Lethal injection is the primary method of this. Firing squad also considered a legal alternative, and Utah has executed 8 men since the U.S. reinstated capital punishment back in 1976. I'm Andy Mack. We're back after this.